this morning. This is our second episode in the equity fundraising series that we've organized with the EIT Health Scandinavia. The objective being to give you answers both from a regional point of view, and that's why we're thrilled to have Markus today with us, but also from a European point of view. So the idea is that you get both point of views and you have the opportunity to ask questions. Now, I really would like this to be interactive, and so I know you're all behind your screens and muted, and most, except for Johan, I don't see anybody's faces. It would be great if you could activate your camera so I can see you and it can be a little bit more personal. And as well, please don't hesitate to stop me and stop Markus as we go along. Hi guys, thank you for joining. So that we can share info from you as well. So first of all, I'd like to know if any of you have already done a fundraising round. That's very important. Some of you might be pre-seed, or maybe you're starting a seed round, but it's important to know. And I would like the ones who have already done a fundraising round to kindly share your experience with us as well, because we're giving, Markus and I will give you the point of view of investors, but we'd love to have startup point of view. Okay, so I will start. First of all, Markus, thank you for joining. It's really nice to have you today. Markus, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I can do that. Hi, I'm Markus. I work as investment analyst for Hadean Ventures. I joined about 2 years ago, and my background is more on the scientific side, where I have a PhD in oncology. And I have also worked with startups and business development, and also have been acting as a business angel myself. So I have invested privately also in both life science and non-life science startups. So that's kind of my background. And at Hadean Ventures, I can also give a quick intro to that. Hadean Ventures is a life science venture fund. We got started in 2018, so also rather new. And the idea behind Hadean Ventures was that, the founding partners basically saw that Scandinavia is, let's say, what one could call an under-ventured region when it comes to life sciences. So there was simply not a lot of specialist money available. And so that's kind of our philosophy, why we have a strong focus on the Nordic countries to help bring the innovation forward there. Especially from a point of view that it's very challenging. I mean, it has gotten better, but especially about 2 years ago, it was very challenging for startups in the Nordics to actually attract funding from specialist investors. We invest all across the life science, so new drugs, of course, medical devices, also into diagnostics and digital health products. And in general, we would usually join about a Series A and later, as we are more a classic venture style investor, not so much seed, but in the Nordics, it would also be possible for us to do certain seed rounds.
Great, thank you, Markus. And for those who were not able to attend our first episode on the Nordic equity scene, Christina, if you could kindly maybe give them the link to the replay, you might hopefully will bring you some interesting information about the Nordic equity scene, especially in life science. So thank you so much, Markus. I just wanted to maybe introduce myself as well. My name is Caroline Tsai. I am head of operations of Angels for Health in France, Angels Santé. It is one of the largest business angel groups in Europe dedicated to animal and human health care. And we are partners of EIT Health France. And as such, EIT Health asked us 2.5 years ago to put together a network of life science investors from across Europe to help early stage startups raise money faster and better from across different regions. So this is the story of another day. That's the 3rd episode. But today we'd like to give you with Markus some tips on how to get ready for your fundraising. So we'll take a look at very obvious things, but I think sometimes it's worthwhile mentioning them. Is, first of all, know yourself, really know your project. And you think, well, of course I know my project, but we'll see, digging a little bit more, that sometimes some of you do not know quite your project the way you should. And then you should know how to package it correctly for the investors that you're going to go see. And then, of course, know your investors. So the word today is be ready. So first question, and maybe you can answer in the chat bot. What is the most decisive factor for an early stage investor? Markus, what's the most important thing for you?
I think if we talk about early stage, such as first seed, where you usually look more in the business angel network, I think one important part is, of course, the idea and concept, but another important part there is also the team, because I mean, you need to believe in the team that they can also really get their idea to life. I mean, if they have a great idea but do not seem to be really committed and maybe are only in there because they maybe want to have a quick turnaround or cash out, it's usually not a good combination. So I think it's mainly the team and the idea behind it. The other things usually come later in the process, I would say.
Okay, and what do you think about a one-person team?
It's okay if the person is really committed to it. Of course, a two-person team is always better, because I mean, if a one-person team, I mean, the person loses interest or something else happens, you don't have anyone left. But in general, it's okay with a one-person team, but 2 or 3 would always be preferred, simply for, I would say, reasons of security for your investment. But there is nothing, I mean, I personally have invested in a one-person startup, so
okay, it can be interesting. Okay. Well, studies show that for early stage investors across Europe and North America, the team is the #1 decisive factor in investing in an early stage company. And another study shows that indeed it is usually better and more attractive to investors to have a team of 2 or 3 co-founders instead of 1. But obviously, if you're just alone, that's fine as well. What you really need to know is what your strengths and weaknesses are, especially if you're alone. And do you often, Markus, tell your prospective companies that they should go out and find someone else to strengthen their team, or do you let them do whatever they feel comfortable with?
Well, I mean, I would usually recommend to, I mean, as said, also 2 brains, no more than 1. So, I mean, even if you get in, let's say, a co-founder at a later stage, look for someone that complements your skills. I mean, if you are the great science guy that has the great idea, find someone that knows how to run a business, because that's definitely not in your DNA then, if you're more for the science side, as an example. So, I mean, I would always encourage, even if you have started your company alone, try to get someone else on board. It also helps you in your capacity to really do what you want to do and to achieve.
Yeah, so it's very important, in my opinion, to really be very honest with yourselves. If you feel that you are lacking certain skills, it's okay. You have to be humble and know that you can't be good at everything. And so it might be important, for the good of your company, to go out and find extra people to help you. How important is your advisory board, Markus, for a company? Because very often when we see companies, our evaluators very often say you have to strengthen your key opinion leaders, your advisory board. Why is that so important?
I would say that's usually a factor that comes in a little bit later. Like the companies that we would look at Hadean Ventures, they definitely should have a good advisory board. That, first of all, these ones can, I mean, let's say it's a drug development project, it's usually clinicians, they are in the clinic, they are with the patients, they know what is the need, and also what is maybe actually also feasible to do, for example, in a hospital. I mean, if you develop some drug and then it would need to be given constant intravenous infusion, but the doctor would tell you, I see this patient once a month, those are things that would maybe not feasible that you don't realize yourself. But of course, an experienced clinician will tell you on the spot. Another thing is that especially VC investors love to talk to also these scientific experts. So it's good when you have some that you have good connections with that you can recommend to talk to. And overall, I mean, they can add great value, but I would say it's usually something that you can build over time. It's not something you need directly at the start of your journey, but it's always good to build a good network of experienced people, especially when it comes to how your product be used.
Okay, so the idea is once you reach a Series A, you should have already started building a good advisory board that can bring you not only expertise, but also networking, because these people know so many people, and the networking is very important from the beginning. So I would really advise you to find the right people straight from the beginning. Start networking. This is what we said last episode. Networking is so essential for you. And I've put on the right side of the screen what I think, but then Markus, you can tell me, and I'd love to have feedback from the audience as well. Things that I feel should be the perfect CEO is someone who knows that he doesn't know. This is what I was saying about knowing yourself. You are very clear about your lack of skills in certain areas, and you are humble enough to know that you should go out and get those expertise elsewhere. But nevertheless, you're very confident about who you are, what you can bring to the company, to the project, and you can sell. And this will be a recurrent theme for me. You are selling yourself and your idea and your project to investors. So you have to be confident, but you also have to be a good parent. What is a good parent? A good parent is someone who is going to bring this company forward like it was a baby. And especially for biotech company, Markus, do you think that the founder of a biotech company is necessarily the one who's going to be able to take it to the next level for clinical trials and then for market access?
Yeah, I mean, I think these points are true if you are at an early stage, but I think one thing that should be added maybe in the bottom for a later time point is also being able to let go. Because there will be the time when you have to run huge clinical trials, you need to start thinking of commercialization, where simply you will not be the one anymore that knows all that. So maybe your role is better than being, for example, a CSO, being still responsible for the science, but have someone else that has done that a lot of times, basically run the company and steer it in the right direction. Because it's also okay as a CEO to really accept that, yes, you can't know everything. So as you say, you know that you don't know, but then accept help and not be like the one that says, no, I want to remain the CEO in this company. Because it will not help your company and most likely yourself neither, because you will be confronted with things that, are simply not your field of expertise. So I would say accepting at a certain point that it's maybe time to get someone else on board is also an important quality as an early stage CEO should have.
Definitely. And please note that investors will say, I will not invest in your company because you're not a good parent. You're not ready to bring on board the right people to take your company to the next level. So we will not invest in you. And so that's important. Be realistic, yet ambitious. I very often see startups say, we are the world leader of, and they're still at a preclinical stage, or they just finished the proof of concept. What's your advice to them, Markus?
Yeah, I think the same. The being realistic is important. I mean, we will never invest on a company based on the numbers the company will provide us. We anyways look up the numbers ourselves. And if they are dramatically different, that basically just undermines the trust we would have in you. So I think it's important also on the numbers. I mean, no one expects you to be the world leader in 5 years. It's okay if you manage to get your product on the market in 5 years. That's already a huge achievement, for example. So I fully agree on that. It's okay. Your numbers can be higher than what we will come up with, but they shouldn't be, let's say, in a different universe.
Yeah, very true. Very true. And this brings us to, okay, now you know yourself, your weaknesses, your strength. You've been networking, surrounding yourself with the right people that can bring you good feedback and their strength. But then you need to know your project before you go. And this is why it's important for me to know if you are a Series A or a seed stage company. At one point, the investors that you're going to go to are going to expect you to know and have the answer to all these points here. They need to know that you have a good IP strategy, that you have a business model that you've thought out, that you've discussed with experts, that you know exactly what your market is and what their barrier is. You've already looked into your regulatory pathway, your valuation. Can we stop on that for a second, Markus? Valuation. Do you feel that there's an issue? We've already talked about this last time, but I'd like your feedback about this, about valuation.
Yes, I mean, I would say that really it's hard to generalize. I mean, we constantly meet companies where we think, yes, this valuation sounds fair, and when we make our analysis, we come to a rather similar number. But we also, I mean, we see companies that come to us and say, yes, our product will be worth 300 million in 2 years. That's why it's 150 million now, which is without sales very hard to do, to be honest. And I mean, yeah, we look at usually companies without sales. So I think it's again something. Try to be realistic. It's okay, again, to be ambitious, but don't be, let's say, outrageous. Also, a good, at least if you have done previous funding rounds, in early discussions, the easiest way out there is always to say, what was your last post money? So the valuation of your company after the last investment round. That is always, in the first talks, a good way to give an indication, where was the money last time? Then the investor also knows, of course, there is most likely something has happened that has increased your value, but you have already a basis for discussion that they know we are looking in this range. So then you do not need to have your full valuation ready. It's more like you can give an indication and say, of course, since then we have achieved this and this and this.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Hi, my name's Gabriel. I'm running a company that develops a surgical sewing machine. I would like you to elaborate on what key activities that you would regard most valuable for the company evaluation. I mean, for the startup companies like IP or etc.
Yeah, so IP is a very important point. I think we would never invest in a company that does not have any patent unless it's digital health, because digital health is different in that sense that you simply don't get patents there. Your intellectual property must lay somewhere else. But for a new product that you want to bring on the market, we would usually like to see a strong patent protecting your invention. Of course, it's hard to value that. That is also true. That's why usually valuations are more also built on sales potential and so on. But it's an important point. And of course, that you have a business model that will be able to generate you money, preferably something that generates you recurring revenue. So not just a one-off sale, and then you need to really do it by constant sales. That works for example, for devices that are single use, then that's perfectly okay, because you will sell it over and over again. But the device that you can use, I don't know, for the next 10 years, there should be also a way to make money aside from just selling that device. So it can be consumables, for example, that you sell with it, just that you have your customer having to come back to you and really provide you more chances to create revenue. So I think those are the 2 points that kind of can strengthen your valuation, I would say.
Isn't it difficult to evaluate the IP, because to get an actual approval of the patent can take some years, and every year that passes is like a year that you can't use the patent, if you understand what I mean. I mean, if you have a patent for 5 years, but you didn't get to the market, you only have 15 years left to use it.
Yes, but we usually, I mean, we also know that, and I mean, normally we expect that once the product reaches the market, there should be about 10 to 15 years of patent life left, because we know how long it takes to develop. And for example, in the case of drugs, there are usually also ways to extend getting exclusivity and so on. So, but yeah, let's say 10 to 15 years is usually what we expect a patent to have of remaining lifetime once the product would be assumed to get to the market.
Yeah, so an actual novelty search and patent application have some kind of value.
Yeah,
I mean,
we don't need a granted patent. We want to see that the patent is filed, and for our processes, we always the IP and patentability analysis we always do external by lawyers, because they really know that. They do also the freedom to operate analysis. So because one thing is to have a patent, but if there are other patents out there that actually block you from using your invention because it kind of uses their technology, then your patent is also rather not much worth, because you can in the end not use your product. So it's actually two things that are important: is that you have a patent and that you have the freedom to operate, which means there are no other patents out there that actually block you from using your invention.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll be giving out, Christina will be sending you a small booklet that we wrote regarding valuation and the various methods that are used to calculate a valuation, not just for biotech companies, but also for medtech or digital health. So have a look at that, and hopefully that will bring you some help. Okay, so know your project, very important, your figures. You really need to be data focused, I think, when you present and when you talk to investors. Markus, regarding figures and valuation, do you think it's okay during this COVID period to be very transparent with investors, to say, well, my sales figures or my preclinical figures have not been what I expected because of the COVID? Because is it okay to say that? Do you guys, can you hear that as an investor?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if I, for example, look now at a company that already generates revenue, and they would try to sell me that COVID has not impacted them, I would always question that, because it has impacted everyone, also in the healthcare. I mean, unless you did, I don't know, a COVID screening test, I think your revenues have declined. That's perfectly fine in these times. Also, delays, especially in the starting of clinical trials. I mean, yes, we expect that right now. It's perfectly fine. If you say, yes, we wanted to start our clinical study in March, we all know you most likely couldn't. So yeah, I think it's okay. Also, it's important there to be transparent and say where the delays come from. I mean, it's also okay to say our delays came from our manufacturer had a problem. I mean, it's just be transparent why it happened, and not just say it was COVID when it was in the end something else.
Yeah, and I think it's important today when you're presenting and preparing a deck to really show how the COVID has affected you, and how you've been very innovative and reactive and proactive to mitigating the issues that the COVID have enhanced. So I think it's important to really talk about that, and I think investors value the transparency. So obviously the basics, once you know yourself, you know your project really well, you need to put it together as a great deck, then prepare your great pitch, both in terms of content and form. You've got to be very professional, very visual, knowledgeable, lots of data. Anything that you'd like to add regarding the basics, Markus? What is it that you've seen that really irritates you when you talk to a startup, and that gives you a bad feeling right from the beginning?
One thing that is always a bit irritating is when very, let's say, basic things such as who are your potential customers and so on, you get the answer, we would like to share it under NDA. So that is always a bit it can be annoying, because for two reasons. First of all, I mean, it's okay if it is like unpublished data you want to patent, that's perfectly fine. Also, in general, we have no problem signing non-disclosure agreements with companies. But we also don't have any interest in general in using your data and use it for something else. That's simply not what we do, because this would also ruin our business if we actually do that. So you can technically be a bit more open towards investors. They are not planning to run away with your invention. That's not their business. They don't even would have the time for that. So I think this is something, just be open and share the things that you feel comfortable in sharing, also without having directly an NDA in place. I think this is something we come across not so much in the Nordics, but in some other countries very frequently. I've
had the case of a company that was asked by investors to give the names of their key opinion leaders, and they said, you haven't signed an NDA, which is ridiculous. So that was a very bad excuse.
Yes, I think I had an even more strange experience when I talked to a startup working in oncology, and I asked them, so what is actually your cellular target that you are going for? And I got the answer, we can tell you that under NDA. And I'm like,
it's okay.
How should I even get an interest in your company then? But
thank you for your visit. And one of the things also that I've seen and that really irritate me personally is when I listen to a 10-minute pitch and at the end, I still don't understand what they do. So really make sure to try out your pitch to non-specialists, first of all, to make sure that they understand. I need to understand in the first 2 minutes of your pitch what exactly you're doing, and then you can unroll your project. But test it out to a lot of people. Make sure that they understand exactly what you do, because if we don't understand, then you missed an opportunity, obviously.
Can I ask you a question here?
Sure.
Thank you. Johan Angerstedt from Stockholm, developing a new operation or surgical device for treatment of hemorrhoids. You mentioned about this NDA, and I think it's kind of tricky from how I understand that you can't sign NDA on everyone that is in contact with you, but as an inventor, you feel that you need to have this NDA also. So at what level do you think is reasonable that you sign an NDA with a potential investor?
Yeah, I mean, as a general thing, I would say always for the first discussion, have a non-confidential pitch deck. So where you have all the data in, you feel comfortable sharing. And if there is then questions coming up, it's okay to also say, yes, we would like to sign an NDA. I mean, usually what should go under NDA is preclinical and clinical data that is not published. If it is published somewhere, share it with the investor, because I could also just read the publication where it is in. So unpublished data, that's completely okay to do under NDA. But it would be also always good to have at least some, like, let's say an appetizer of the data to show, like, yes, we have proof of concept, our product works, in like also a first pitch in a non-confidential version. It's just, I mean, as said, we have no problem in signing these NDAs. It's just like bureaucracy we also have to go through for maybe something that we see just doesn't match for certain reasons. But it's always okay to ask for an NDA on like unpublished data. That is perfectly fine, and every credible investor will agree on that.
Yeah, and also don't forget that most investors that are capable of putting 2-3 million in your company have a natural deal flow that comes in every year. So they can see anything from 500 to more than 1,000 startups. And so you want, if you do get the opportunity to have 10 minutes to introduce your company to them, you should make it their worthwhile. So you need to be sure that you give them data that they can find attractive, because if you say we have great clinical results, but I can't show them to you because I'm under NDA, you're not under NDA, or we've got, you know, great market share and we've got so many new clients, and you don't give any numbers, then you're wasting the investor's time and you're wasting your time. So I think being data driven, show as much data as you can that will not jeopardize your company, but I'm sure you can find a way around it so that you make it attractive.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, you can anonymize the data also in some way. That is okay. If you just want to name your compound, whatever you're developing, just compound 1, that's perfectly fine, but at least show some data that supports that, yes, what you do is working.
Yeah. And just before we move on, in terms of the basics, obviously, you should have various kind of decks. The one that you can introduce when you are physically presenting your product, and so you should have minimal information on the slides, and then you should have another deck that you send to investors that will have more complete information. So please make sure that you have various versions of your deck, and make sure that you are ready to pitch. As we always say, you should be able to pitch to the guy that you're sitting next to in a plane that, strangely enough, is an investor that really would be interested in your product. You should be able to pitch to him in 1 minute, in 5 minutes, or in 10 minutes. So really work on that. Markus, how important is it for an investor to have sort of a personalized deck for Hadean Ventures, for example?
I think it is important, maybe not targeted on every single investor, but know your investor. I mean, if you talk to us, we are a life science specialist. So you can skip the first 5 slides that tell us cancer is a global problem and it is rising. We know that. This is true. If you talk to non-specialist investors, these slides always make a good impression to them, but we know this. So it's basically, the more specialized your investor is, the less background you need to present, let's say it like that. So that is usually, it's okay to also have these slides in there, but it's then also okay to start, I guess you are aware of that, so we can just move on. It just shows you know whom you're talking to. The data or the things would be there if I would then say, oh, thanks, I'm not familiar with that for certain area. Can you explain that? But yeah, important is, if you're talking especially to a specialist, expect that they know the basics. That is perfectly fine to assume.
Yeah. And it's very important, as I said, to alter your deck and your communication to the profile of your investor. Obviously, if you're going to go and see an agnostic business angel network or an agnostic family office, keep it simple. Don't spend 80% of your time in the tech side, because they won't understand it anyway. So make sure, first of all, that they clearly understand very quickly what you're doing and what you want to do, and then focus on the financial side, because indeed, if they're agnostic, what they want is to know how good of a return they're going to get, how attractive the investment can be for them. And indeed, if you're going to go towards specialized VC and CVCs, then yeah, don't spend your first 10 minutes talking about your grandfather who died of the same condition, and get into the technical side of things quickly. And of course, don't forget the financial side. How important, Markus, is it to really show that they really know their figures in terms of investment return and how interesting and attractive it's going to be for you? Is that really important for you, or are you going to do your calculations on your own?
So what is important for us is to know what will be your funding need. more or less until the product would be commercial, so have a long-term vision as well. It's okay to have rough numbers for, like, if I need to run a phase 2, I will need 20 million. It's okay. If it turns out to be 21 or 19, that's fine. But know your basic numbers that you would need to a point where you assume a company exit would be possible, and also know your market. So what is, not only tell me cancer is a 20 billion market, because you are not addressing cancer, you are addressing a small subset of whatever. So an overview of what is the market opportunity is for us also very important. To be fairly honest, return projections, we usually are not taking into considerations what the company tells us. We do that ourselves. Okay. Because that depends also a bit on how much would we plan to invest and so on. So a company that tells me that this will give you a 20 times return in 2 years, I honestly don't believe it.
Okay.
Because we know it takes. That is, I think, more important for the first part that you mentioned, business angels, family offices, that would not do an in-depth valuation themselves. So they would like to see such numbers. But once you come to a VC level, they all do the calculations themselves. So you do not need to do these calculations for them. They will anyways do their own and come to a, I would say, normally completely different number.
Okay. And so there's that side, and then there's the exit timeline as well. When you go to a VC, it's super important to know how old their fund is, right? Because if they're at the beginning of the fund, then you know you are more comfortable. There's less pressure in terms of exit. Whereas if they're towards the end of their investing timeline, then there's less time to exit. Can you explain that a little bit to the audience, Markus, about the investing, divesting timeline for a normal fund?
Yeah, so I mean, if we look at life science funds, they have a bit longer timeline than, for example, a tech fund. So for us, it's usually the lifetime of our fund is 10 years, plus some reserve for, let's say, projects that take longer. But that means the 10 years run from the day the investors put their money in. So in case of Hadean Ventures, for example, 2018, which means 2028 is normally when we want to have this fund fully done, have exited the companies and are working with a follow-up fund. So of course, we would take a higher risk bet in terms of stage in 2018 than we would take today, because 2.5 years, nearly 3 years of the 10 are now passed. And if you tell us, yes, we will need 3 years to get into the clinic and we'll be with a product on the market in 10 years, that's maybe not what we would do right now, but maybe with the next fund. So that is to some extent true, but then it also depends on the investors, because usually many investors have already several funds, so they would find the right match as well.
Yeah.
If you are, let's say, more in the digital health space and also talk more to classic health tech investors, there it is more important because they usually look at something between 3 and 6 years for an exit. So then, of course, if they are towards the end of the fund, they look for something that goes in 3 years and not in 6.
Yeah. So that exit size timeline is very important, and the size of the fund as well, because if you know, for example, that the size is let's say a 20 million euro fund, you know that's not going to go very, very far. And if you follow that investor and you know that they've already invested, let's say, in 4 companies, most likely they're not going to invest in a lot of other companies. So I would say, know your investor, know who to spend a lot of time pursuing, and forget the ones who are, for example, in a monitoring stage because they are trying to raise a new fund, but they haven't been able to do so. So if you are trying to raise money within the next 4 months, you know that there's no point in going to them because they don't have the funds to invest, even if they have a big name on their doorstep. So it's really important for that. Question, Markus, when a company goes and contacts an investor, let's say they send their deck, and then what's the correct timeline for sending another email saying, have you received my email, my deck? Can we get an appointment? How proactive and how pushy should a startup be?
Yeah, so I mean, general on the approach part. One thing that is important, always attach your pitch deck in the first email and do not ask like, hey, I'm doing this and this, could that be interesting? I mean, yes, it's much less likely that an investor writes back to you, yeah, that could be interesting, please send me a pitch deck. So always put that on, nothing to lose there. In general, I mean, reach out and maybe give them like 2 weeks before you would send a follow-up. I know that for myself. I mean, I get these requests, I think, oh yes, I need to answer, but sometimes it just gets forgotten. If they follow up, I usually feel, let's say, a bit embarrassed, and I would normally reply rather quickly and saying, yes, sorry, I just missed that. I will get back to you in whatever time. I think 2 weeks, I would say, is maybe, as a rule of thumb, a good time to follow up.
Great. And then if you are lucky enough to get an appointment and to be able to sit down with these people, take advantage of it. Don't spend your half hour with them just talking about you and your company. Really engage with the investor, ask him why they accepted the meeting, ask them questions after your deck saying, have I been clear? Do you clearly understand? What advice would you give me? And if ever, and this is my opinion, but Markus, tell me, I think it's always, and this is why I call it Sales 101, when you do a sales course, they always tell you, never leave a meeting without 5 names. Don't hesitate to say to the investor, okay, you're not interested, but do you know who I can contact on your behalf maybe? Or can you give me names of people who would be interested in hearing about my project? And more importantly, listen to their questions, because if they ask questions, that means that either you were not clear enough in your presentation, or that you should maybe change certain things or change your business model or think about a new IP or a new market, whatever. So listen and learn. And I mean, Markus, investors are always happy to give feedback and tips, right?
Yes.
You hesitated there. You hesitated.
No, investors are happy to give feedback, but investors are also happy if that feedback gets accepted. That is sometimes a problem with companies. Because it is, of course, it is our opinion. It is not objective. It is subjective for us. But if we have whatever that issue, accept it and try to, even if you disagree, this investor is gone for you. They will not change their mind when you come back and say, but it's actually like that. That is very, very unlikely. But just know then that the next investor would not misunderstand it. So take that and change it in a way that it gets more clear. If you think that, yes, this was just a matter of being wrongly understood. So it is perfectly fine. Also, if you get a very generic reject, of course, you can ask, would you mind to elaborate? Maybe you get an answer, maybe not. But this, I would say, it's not a time where you should follow up. If the person decides they don't want to spend the time or don't want to give you like the real reasons, because the reasons can also just be not even about your company. It can be internal things, as said, like, yeah, we are currently not considering an investment at that stage, but maybe they do not want to publicly disclose that. It can always have also reasons that are not connected to you or your company.
Yeah. And always, and this is really the basic advice I would give, don't send your deck or don't waste your time with investors who will never invest in your sector. Don't send, if you're a medtech company, don't send it to an investor who only does biotech companies investments. Okay, so really this is know your investor. Yeah, so very important to listen, to learn. So true. Pace yourself. And this was about knowing your investors. I very often see companies that say, oh, I want to go and be contact with, Gilda or LSPs, and they're at seed stage or bridge stage. So knowing your investor means also knowing at which stage you can go and see certain categories of investors, okay? Even if you think you're great, when you're not ready, you're not ready, okay? So for example, Hadean Ventures is Series A. So do you even answer a company that's like at a pre-seed stage and when they send you a deck?
Yes, but the answer would be this is way too early stage for us. Maybe look for a seed investor or something like that. So I would still try to give feedback. And also we have, I would say, a slightly different approach on if the company is from the Nordics or if it is even outside the Nordics. Because as said, in the Nordics, we could consider a seed investment if we believe that this is a great job. But that's then the thing is, we know this is a lot of work also from our side. So we would like to do it somewhere where we are close by, that we can just get to the company and help them. That's why we would not do that in Italy or Spain, because that is 4-hour plane away in case one could travel. So therefore we have a slightly different approach. But usually, yes, if someone comes, I have this great idea, I'm looking for $500,000 of seed funding, my answer would be that's not our business. You should look for a business angel or a seed investor. So yeah, it is a waste of time for the company.
Yeah, but would you say that it's a waste of time for the company to contact an investor through an investment event, for example, to say, listen, I know you're not investing in my stage development, but I think it might be, we're the type of company that you may want to follow. Would you mind if we could just talk over coffee? And is that something that you can envision as well in the networking space?
Yeah.
Idea that you follow companies that could be interesting for you in a year's time or a year and a half?
Yes, I think that is a good approach for these type of investor conferences. I think it should be, let's say, a more local one, where this is usually working, because if you look at the huge ones like Bio Europe and so on, everyone's calendar is super packed. So everyone really prioritizes talking to the ones potentially interesting. But if I go, let's say, to Stockholm to some investor day of an incubator, I know that I'm most likely not finding my investment that I'm going to do in 2 months, but maybe something that, yes, good to have on the radar for 1 year or 2 years. So yeah, this is again, I think, a bit know your audience and know what is the aim of the event. So in local investor events, that's definitely a good approach. And also that's why also bigger investors go to these events, to find deals that maybe are interesting in the future, because we know what comes straight from an incubator is usually not a Series A ready startup.
Yeah, and also I was told by an investor that he really likes to be very clear from the beginning that there's no investment possible when he speaks to a founder that is at an earlier stage. And he feels there's no pressure of investment, so he feels more comfortable in giving advice and giving names of people that the founder can go and talk to, because it's like when you're looking for a job. If you contact somebody in your network to say, do you have a job for me? That puts extreme pressure on them. But if you say, do you know someone who would be interested in talking to me about this and that, then you obviously give a name. So it should be about pacing yourself and not putting pressure on the wrong investors. Because I always hear from investors, and Markus, you can give me your point of view, that if a company goes too early to see maybe a potential investor that would be great for them in a year's time, then the investor usually says, oh, I know them, I'm not interested, even though they contacted them a year earlier. Why is that? Why won't they give the company a second chance to look at their new data,
I would say that depends on the investor. We are usually very open to that, to also look at things again, because we also know companies develop. But I think it's a bit like, yes, you get in, the investor gets in the head like, oh, I looked at them a year ago, yes, we didn't invest. And then it's much easier to say, yeah, we are still not interested. So that's why I think it can always be good to approach the investor at the right time, at least if you're looking for an investment. Because yes, there is this mindset that I have looked at it and yeah, we didn't invest. We in general, we look at opportunities again. And also, I mean, we have our own databases, so we also make our own remarks there and would maybe say, not currently, maybe in a year. And if they come in a year and I read that comment, I think like, okay, maybe now it is actually the right time. But in general, yes, don't waste the chance, because it is easy to get into someone's head as, yeah, I remember that, no, that was not for us. Although it can.
Yeah, and talking about, and then we'll move on to the questions. But another thing that I've heard a lot is that when you go too early, too fast, then the equity scene is very small. And then investors talk among themselves and they say, oh, this company, we've heard about it. We've seen it everywhere. They're at every competition and things like that. And then you just give out a negative vibes to the core of the equity scene, which is not good as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
To some extent as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So just in essence, be ready. This is what we said. Be very proactive. Ask questions. Go and don't be scared to contact investors again, and be quick. I mean, I've introduced companies to investors, and there was one company that said, for example, wrote back to the investor saying, okay, well, if you're interested, contact me. And I said to the startup, of course he's interested. He asked me to introduce you to him. Give him some time slots for a call. Be very proactive, because obviously the investor has a lot of companies that are at his door. So as we say, strike while the iron is hot, and be very professional. Just be responsive. I think you have maybe maximum 24 hours to answer an investor. If he sends you an email saying, okay, I'd like some more info, you should answer that same day, or max 24. Now, Marcus, if a company answers 4 days later, what do you think?
It depends. If I send them a list of 10 questions, I know it takes time. But if
okay, yeah, okay.
Could you provide me just with some more data on this? Yes, it would be great to have an answer, because obviously yes, I was working with your case, so that was an issue I came across. So the quicker I have the answer, the more likely I keep on working with it. But if I send you now my 10 open questions, it's okay to take several days.
Great.
Because then
okay. Yeah. No, absolutely. No, if you're in due diligence, you have time to answer. Yeah. And regarding the due diligence, we'll be sending you as well a document to help you prepare your documents. As you know, the faster you have everything ready, the faster your due diligence process will go. Very often it's slowed down because you take ages to give the investor the info he's asking for. So hopefully you have some more questions for Marcus and myself. Please don't hesitate, unmute yourself. This is a great opportunity to ask Marcus for tips and advice.
Hello. Or if you'd like Marcus and Caroline, a question again from Gabriel. So maybe startups aren't in the luxury position of choosing investors, but if we would be able to choose, how would you suggest us to sort the investors and to do our own due diligence?
Very good question. Marcus, would you like to answer that? I have my opinion, but
always choose us first and then the rest, and then
okay, we talk later then, Marcus.
Basically go with the one that you feel you get best along with. Also, it's always good to try to get more than one on board. So I mean, if there are many investors interested, just try to get several of them on board. There's no problem with that, because also investors usually like to have other ones on board for later financing rounds, that they know I don't need to go out and it's only me that needs to find all the other investors. So yeah, just I think go with the one you like best and try to get simply more on board if you can.
And coming from an angel network, obviously my answer would be find someone that can bring you smart money, but as well expertise, network, advice, support. That's what an investor should also be like. It's like a marriage. So as you say, the idea is for you to get as many opportunities and choices possible. When we said in the first slide that for an investor, the team was the #1 asset, well, same for you. You need to feel completely at ease with your investor. You need to get good vibes from him, that he's not going to be too intrusive, that he's going to be supportive, and that he will bring something to the table other than just the money, because money you can always find, but finding a real partner in crime is a bit more difficult. Any other questions or?
Yeah, I have a question. My name is Bengt Ban. I'm from Invigo Power. We do transcutaneous energy links for heart pumps and artificial hearts. Markus, when you do investment, do you do it with preference shares, or in what way do you normally do it?
Yeah, I mean, that's always subject to discussion, but usually, I mean, we are going with, let's say, the standard VC terms, which is preferred shares. We usually like to have some liquidation preference and the board seat. That's normally our go-to strategy. We have done otherwise in companies, so it's not fixed, but this is, I mean, yes, if you want to make an investor happy, that's usually the 3 things all VCs ask for.
Yeah, so it's negotiable.
It is negotiable, and also it always depends. I mean, if you have already other investors on board that are completely against, I mean, it can work if the investor is really committed, but always try to also find the middle way, because I mean, yeah, it's both sides that need to do some sacrifice, and it can also help to just do some modeling on what do these terms actually mean yourself, because very often you actually realize it doesn't make a real difference for you, but it can make a difference for the investor in terms of security of the investment.
Okay, thank you.
Christina, do we have time for one last question? One last question, anyone? Are there any questions in the discussion box? Christina, no, nothing. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, first of all, thank you for attending. Markus, thank you so much for sharing this moment with us and for your insights. So again, you can watch the replay of our last session if you want to get more info on the Nordic equity scene. And on the 8th of December, we'll be explaining to you in details what the Investor Network can do for your fundraising on a European level. So Markus, of course, and Hadean Ventures are members of the Investor Network, and we'll be happy to explain in details what the process is, how you can apply, and what you can expect. Thank you very much to everyone. Thank you to EIT Health Scandinavia for organizing this. And
yes, thank you, Caroline and Markus, and look forward to see you all on the next occasion on the 8th of December. We will send you an invite as well. So and also the material that Caroline mentioned.
Great. And for the ones who want to get more info right now about the Investor Network, you can go on the EIT Health /project/Investor Network. The application is there because I saw there was a question about that. Thank you so much, everyone. It was great. Thank you. I enjoyed it. Hope you did too, and hope you found it informative.
Thank you.
And good luck for your fundraising.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.